What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I wanted to discuss a thing that has bothered me for some time in D&D Fifth Edition, primarily through firsthand experience, and that would be curses. So, obviously, we have some spells related to curses and things like that, but when it comes to fantasy stories, curses are, I would dare say, a pretty solidified trope, bordering on cliche at this point. And I don't think D&D 5th edition does a good job of reflecting how curses work in a lot of stories. I'm talking about things like lycanthropy or vampirism, or even going to Disney Beauty and the Beast, where there are these long things that gestate over time and have both a physical and mental effect on the person under the weight of the curse. If we look at something like Bestow Curse and how D&D 5th edition handles cursing right now, then Bestow Curse lasts for a minute. As it's cast, it takes one action to cast it. You touch somebody and you curse them. You can cast it at higher levels to elongate the duration, but it, causes disadvantage on checks, some extra damage, things like that. It does say that the DM can add or replace certain things, but never to make it more powerful than what the spell already does. And it's all very much solidified in the mechanics. And then remove curse. Remove curse. It's a 3rd level spell, so 5th level spellcasters have access to it. And it can just be a fast track to kind of a letdown for something like lycanthropy, which the monster manual calls out. Lycanthropy can be removed with remove curse. And I just have to think that most D&D worlds, lycanthropy is not going to be a problem. If 5th level clerics can knock out 2 a day, and mileage may vary based on the setting. You get what I'm saying. There's not a big enough cost associated with it. And so that's my issue with curses, is it doesn't match those kind of iconic curses that we know from stories, like a mummy's curse, for example. And they did try to fix some of this in Vanrickton's Guide to Ravenloft. I will give them credit, but it was very much, we don't want to step on the current mechanics too bad. So they basically added 3 elements to a curse: a pronouncement, a burden, and then a resolution. And then once it's resolved, you're good. But some of these burdens, some of them are cool, like being haunted by a wraith every night from dusk till dawn. And if you manage to kill it, then you get a 10-day break and then it comes back. That's neat. That's interesting. The idea of being haunted by something and being cursed to be haunted. But another one is 3 levels of exhaustion, which means you're getting disadvantage on ability check rolls, half speed, and disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. So disadvantage on virtually every roll that you're making, and your speed is halved. That's not a curse that you can saddle a player with for a long time. That's going to make play just utterly miserable. So I found another supplement that I really, really like from Ghostfire Gaming. It's their Grim Hollow campaign guide. And they have curses, both kind of standard curses and then transformative curses that they just refer to as transformations, that cover lycanthropy, vampirism, becoming a lich, things like that. And these 2 things and the way they do it mechanically, I love, and I'm definitely going to try to implement into a game of mine if I can get the players buy-in on it. So the way curses work in Grim Hollow is they are spells. There's not just one bestow curse spell. The bestow curse spell is obviously still in it. This is a supplement for D&D 5th edition, but they add a handful of curses that every spellcasting class gets, and so you don't have to worry about wizards get this curse, bards get this curse. Everybody gets this curse. The only thing that's specific to their setting, Grim Hollow, is a material component called Shadow Steel, which is like steel that's been infused with dark magics. It all has a monetary cost in the material thing, so that's, you just replace it with whatever you want and just keep the material cost the same. So first off, it gives the player characters an opportunity to dish out some of these iconic curses, which is great, but it also gives a very codified and mechanical means of bestowing these curses beyond you broke into a mummy's tomb. So the way it works is you have a curse strength table. So this can affect the spell save DC that the target makes. So if you only have a secondhand passing knowledge of the target, then it's a -10 to the spell save DC. So if you have a spell save DC of 15, all of a sudden they only need to beat a 5. If you have firsthand knowledge of them, then it's -5. And if you're familiar with them, it's 0. You can go one of two ways. As a DM, you can either keep it just kind of amorphous, so you're familiar enough with them, or you can add like a hard magic kind of definite thing that you need to obtain. One example I really like is the Dresden Files, where they put a lot of weight on knowing somebody's true name, and by that, how they say their full name. Not just that you've read what their full name is, but you've heard where they put the emphasis and how they say it. And if you can replicate that, you have an immense amount of power over them. So as a DM, if you want to make it a bit more hard magic-y, you could say, if you know their true name, then it's 0, or even give them a +5 to the spell save DC if you want to do that. And then also the motivation of the person casting the curse and kind of what the target did to them also plays a role in bumping up the spell save DC. You only take the highest modifier, but like if there was an egregious betrayal, you get a +10 to the spell save DC. So that's a good way of offsetting if you aren't super familiar with the person. So if it's like you're trying to curse somebody that betrayed your family, but you never met them, like they betrayed your father long ago, so you only have a secondhand knowledge of them, so that's -10, but there was an egregious betrayal involved, so +10, so that's canceled itself out and you're back to your normal spell save DC. So if you try to cast a curse on somebody and they succeed on the saving throw, they know that somebody tried to curse them. They don't know that you tried to curse them, but somebody did. But if they fail, they're not aware that they've been cursed yet. All the curses have a triggering event and then 3 stages of progression that the curse goes through, which I love. I love that they get more and more intense as time goes on, until finally you hit a culmination point where the curse is finally like overtaken the person, and then they become a monster. If it's a PC that was cursed, then they become an NPC. Hand over your character sheet. Nothing short of a wish spell can undo this. And the way you progress through these is with the use of the escalation mechanic, where, as written, every day when the person who's been cursed wakes up, they roll a d20. They have to roll greater than the number of checks they have made up to that point for that stage. So stage 1, wake up, day 1, roll. The only thing that you need to avoid is rolling a natural 1. Then day 2, the DC becomes 2, 3, 4, etc. Because I like longevity in curses, I might modify this to make it once per week or even month, depending on the length of the campaign, just because having them do it every day within like 2.5 months, you're going to be guaranteed that they're going to be culminating in that curse. And so it puts a very quick timeline on it. Where if it's a week or a month, you can allow that tension to build slowly over time and really allow the party to grapple, when do we need to deal with this? Because stage 1 of these curses is very narrative. One is the curse of ill fate, which stage 1 is you just have bad luck. When you go to like shop somewhere, the shop closes right before you get to the door. Mundane pieces of equipment break while you're using them. Things like that. Nothing that's going to mechanically break you, but just your life is inconvenienced. Then stage 2, you start to become a bit more clumsy and klutzy, and you have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws, which is a bad score to have disadvantage on all saving throws for. But that is that next step in that progression, and maybe at that point the player starts going, hey guys, can we go deal with this? That'd be great. And maybe the rest of the party, we're in the middle of adventure, it's fine. And then stage 3, their dexterity score becomes 6, unless it was already lower than that, which if it was already but yeah, your dexterity score drops down to 6. And I would assume that stage 2 still applies, so you still have disadvantage on saving throws as well. And at that point, you really need to deal with this. You really need to go deal with the curse. So how do you deal with curses? And then culminating, you become a monster that they included in their campaign guide, the Herald of Calamity, and you are no longer a player character. So how do you deal with it? You use Remove Curse, which is another thing that's bothered me with like Vanrickton's, is they introduced like the Loop Guru lycanthropy, which they specifically say Remove Curse doesn't work on this unless you've killed the specific Loop Guru that infected the person. And then there's a DC 17 saving throw that they have to make when you cast Remove Curse and then the curse is lifted, and they have 3 levels of exhaustion. And there are other things that you encounter in the source material for D&D Fifth Edition that just say remove curse doesn't work on this. And it's like, well, if it's a curse and you made a spell called remove curse, why not just let remove curse work? And yeah, I'll get into fixing remove curse here in a second. But the way they do it that I really like, and this is how I would fix it personally, but if you don't want to use an outside source, you can do something else that I'll get into. But the way they do it, remove curse removes curses, but you have to have a material component, which as of right now with vanilla D&D, you don't have to have a material component. It's just verbal somatic. So the material component has to be a cure component, as they call it. And they provide a list in the source material, but you can make something up that fits the specific curse that the person is under. But there are things like a book that's never been read, or the hair of someone lost but not found, a hag's promise, which is a specific type of potion in their setting. But you could also just try to get a hag's promise. And so fairy tale stuff, like fairy tale stuff that you need to, these unattainable, difficult to find things that you have to go find. And they're almost like a riddle in and of themselves. How do we get a book that's never been read? And yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And that becomes, curses become a quest. Curses become an adventure in and of themselves, which is what they shouldn't be disadvantaged on attack rolls against the person that cursed them, which is one of the things Bestow Curse does. They should be interesting and long lasting and a quest to go fix them. So the way you cure them is you cast remove curse, and you have to have 1 cure component per stage that the person that's been cursed is in. So if they're in stage 1, you just need 1. But if they're all the way in stage 3 and they're like, there's the danger of culmination, then you got to go find 3 of these things, which you really don't want to leave that to chance, especially if they're rolling every day. Then just the tension is crazy at that point. So yeah, I really like this idea of introducing this fairy tale notion of curing curses. I don't know how many musical theater nerds I got out there, what up, but Into the Woods, and the whole first act of that musical is based around finding a cow as white as milk and hair as yellow as corn. And it's just, it's great. And it's very indicative of how curses should be dealt with. So I like it. Now let's talk about transformations. So lycanthropy, vampirism, becoming a lich, becoming a seraph even. These are all transformations that player characters can undergo, and they're very much treated kind of like curses in that there are a lot of boons that come with it, but a lot of flaws as well. And so there are 4 levels of transformation instead of 3 for curses. And they are treated like milestones as opposed to having an escalation die and leaving it up to chance. So you would pick, like you're going with lycanthropy, you would pick different milestones that would indicate that the curse and the transformation is taking hold in a greater and greater sense, like killing an innocent person. That would be a milestone, obviously, that would show like, okay, this is progressing. And every time that you bump up the transformation, you get to pick a new boon and a new flaw that's associated with it. So like with lycanthropy, you get all the cool, like you get natural claws and a bite attack, and your strength score goes up and your constitution score goes up and all these cool other fiddly bits, and you're a hybrid half beast thing that you transform into. But the flaw, lure of the hunt, which is something lycanthropy is missing in D&D 5th edition, is a flaw. So lure of the hunt is great. So essentially at the start of every turn while you're in hybrid form, you have to make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. Not difficult to pass. If you are in the light of the full moon, you automatically fail this saving throw. So if it's a full moon, you're always failing it. And essentially, you have to use your turn, if you fail, to move towards and attack the closest non-player characters or creatures that are nearby, prioritizing helpless creatures. And the book does identify what they mean by helpless as unconscious, restrained, paralyzed, blinded, or frightened. So any NPC, including creatures that fit that criteria, are your priority because you're a hunter, you're a predator, you're looking for easy prey. And yeah, you go after them, you use all of your actions to hunt them and attack them. And also, if you're ever just even in normal humanoid form caught in the full moon, you have to make a DC 20 wisdom saving throw. And if you fail, you transform into hybrid mode. So if you're in a full moon, DC 20, and if you fail that, then you're automatically going to fail the other saving throws to try and like contain your lust for the hunt. So I love it, and there's more flaws and boons that you get as your transformation level goes up, but I really like this. And then all this culminates with the final transformation level 4 flaw, predatory nature, where if you can see, hear, or smell a helpless creature, then you have disadvantage on all wisdom saving throws, so your attempts to contain your lust for the hunt become even more difficult. At the beginning of your turn, if you can see, hear, or smell a hostile or helpless non-player character, then you have to make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw or transform into your hybrid mode. And then lastly, if you kill a creature while in hybrid mode, you can't transform back until dawn the next day. So at that point you are fully like werewolf lycanthrope. And then curing these are a little bit different. So instead of remove curse, you cast regenerate, which is a 7th level spell. You still have to have the cure components based on the level of transformation, unless they're transformation level 4, at which point or they've been transformed for more than 1 year. So even if they haven't hit level 4, if they've been level 1 or 2 or 3 for more than a year total, not in a specific level, if they've been a lycanthrope for more than a year, then also the only thing that can cure them is the wish spell. So regenerate, and you still need the cure components like before based on the transformation level. Regenerate, I may house rule it to where if it's transformation level 1, then remove curse will work. The only reason being that it being a 7th level spell, that means that if you use the transformations early on in your campaign, there's just nothing that the players can do. They can seek out an NPC to help, but a 7th level spell, it's gonna be difficult to find an NPC that can cast a spell that high. Okay, and lastly, I want to touch on, if you don't want to use any of this stuff, even though I really like it, I'm excited by the prospect of using this, but if you don't want to use this stuff, how do you fix remove curse as it currently stands? What I would do simply is, if you're bestowing curse on a PC, put what level spell slot remove curse needs to be cast at and allow them to cast it with a higher spell slot. So if it's were-rat lycanthropy, say remove curse cast with a 5th level spell slot will remove this curse. Or if it's some kind of lich-esque, like you're slowly going to be transformed into an undead lich, make it a 7th level spell slot with remove curse. That's the easiest way to fix remove curse, to where it's just not a 3rd level spell that fixes all of these things. You have to put more power behind it. You have to do more with it. I would also probably add material components to it, because that's just interesting and fun, but that's just me. Let me know what you thought down below of the Grim Hollow campaign guide by Ghostfire Gaming. Huge shout out to them, because I really like the work that they did with curses and transformations, and I definitely want to be using these in a game that I'm running. So thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.